Hi everyone, Dom from Johnny Rick Games, and in this video, this is an updated, expanded video of what is Westgate Adventures. Well, Westgate Adventures is a campaign setting that we developed back in about 2010 to be a primary campaign setting, well, not primary campaign setting, but a campaign setting designed to be exclusively for the Osric game system. We noticed that there really weren't any settings, as far as we were aware, that were designed for that. Most everybody was making Osric books that were compatible with settings that were made years ago by TSR or Judges Guild or Rollmaster, a bunch of other companies, but designed for those settings that already existed. So we want to make a new setting. So we designed Westgate Adventures to be basically a generic sort of like mid to mid-low magic setting where there was a high variability for the kinds of stories that could be told in that setting. So that was the whole grandiose idea. Shortly after we started publishing modules for it, we weren't able to get the campaign setting actually produced before we actually had to close the original Johnny Rick Games. But there was one that was heavily in development. So we started by just making the modules, though, basically to learn how to make modules, to see how we could get into publishing that way. And we learned a lot with those 5 first books. But we learned very quickly that from responses from people almost immediately that the title Westgate Adventures was not a good title, mostly because one thing that I did not know, as much as I was a big fan of D&D and I've been running D&D campaigns since the 80s, I did not play Forgotten Realms games. I never was a big fan of that setting. I still am not at all. But I did not realize that there was a town called Westgate that was actually in that setting. It's a well-known town. And so a lot of people emailed us right away, oh, is this the Westgate from Forgotten Realms? Because it seems like a little different. And I was like, oh, no. That's no good. So, long story short, with our new Johnny Rick Games, although we're still publishing these reprints in the Westgate Adventures branding, in the future, this will be different. We're not going to be using Westgate Adventures going forward. So we're only going to print these 5 books, these reprint books, the ones that we've already published before. They're revised, they're expanded. They also include rules for Old School Essentials now. But those will be rebranded in the future for a new game. We haven't released the title of the new game system yet, but it's a new game in the future. It's compatible, though. If you buy these books, the Westgate books, or if you have Osric as well, all that stuff is compatible with our new game. That's designed to be that way. So, we don't want you to have to re-buy our stuff over and over again, unless you're a collector and just enjoy that. but we want you to make sure that whichever version you have, even if it's the original version of it, that you can look at it pretty quickly and use it at the table for whatever you're going to be using it with. So this is the time in these Kickstarters to pick up the Westgate branding versions. We may publish them again. I was just showing you Watchtower on the Hill. This was our first one we did. We may publish these again in the new branding, but I don't know that we will. Only because we've already published them a couple of times now and they're compatible. So there isn't much of a reason, although the new game system is a different system and there are some new rules attached to it. So we may see a revised version of this in the future too. But right now, this is the only time we're really going to publish them. So hopefully that explains a little bit about what the Westgate setting is. Just a little bit on the modules too. Like I said, the setting was designed to be variable. We wanted to make sure that you could play a lot of different kinds of adventures, whether you were into high fantasy, low fantasy, historical style games like No Magic Historical, horror settings, extraplanar kinds of stuff, whatever you were trying to do. There's some place in the Westgate setting for that. Those of you that were fans of the OA, the Oriental Adventure settings, we certainly had that as well. Azteca style stuff, anything like that. I'm a professional. I was an anthropologist for a long time, so I really love working with other cultures. And seeing some of these other settings in the game was a huge excitement for me to try to bring that forth in a way that was basically cherishing these other cultures around the world and giving people that are not familiar with those cultures a chance to interact with them in a way that maybe they haven't been before. So, but those were the goals of the Westgate. When we actually published these original modules, the first 5 were very just medieval fantasy style things, but we wanted to make sure that they were a little different. So each one of our modules has a little bit of a different focus to it. Watchtower on the Hill was really just sort of like an introductory game because we noticed that at the time there were not very many introductory games for low-level characters being published. A lot of people were making games for anywhere between like 5th and 10th level characters, which is really common because that's like where the meat of adventuring happens. But getting started is another matter. So it made Watchtower on the Hill to be a very simple starter game that had some intrigue to it and ways that game can kind of develop. Beneath the Ghoul Lair was sort of the next step of that. The party's a little leveled up between 2nd and 4th level, and there's some different stuff kind of going on there, as well as some change-ups in terms of what the real kind of monster in the adventure is. And it also introduces the concept of the dungeon within the dungeon, which I love using that quite a bit in my stories. Warrens of the Great Goblin Chief was more of a wilderness-style game where there's basically a MacGuffin story going on, somebody trying to find an object and a lead up to a much larger situation. But again, for low-level parties, it was a 36-level adventure at best, really. And it's really played great if you're 2nd or 3rd or 4th level. It works really well for that. But it's sort of like that first time into the larger world of things in terms of either the wilderness or politics. So that was what that was made for. Of Hunger and Lies. At the time I'm doing this video, that's the one that we're kickstarting right now, and that's a murder mystery in sort of a Ravenloft Planescape style way. Love that adventure as well. And our final one that we're going to eventually do is Ghosts from the Darkwood, and that's a very the small village horror style game. And again, I'm a big fan of Ravenloft and Planescape, so you're going to see a lot of that, as well as Call of Cthulhu as well. But I've limited the Cthulhu because so many other people are doing that right now. The Mythos is such a popular thing, so if I kind of really reduce that quite a bit. So we're really focusing more on kind of horror elements and things outside of a party's control, essentially. And that's what we see a lot in these modules. So anyway, so that's Westgate. That's sort of an overview of our books. Again, we're not going to continue publishing these under the Westgate logo. They're going to have our new game logo, which we haven't revealed yet, but we wanted to kind of focus on these Westgate ones for right now. And that's coming down the line. We still might, I almost hesitate to bring it up in the video, but we might see some bonus Westgate material in the near future, only because we had made a lot originally before we had to shut the company. I had somewhere around like 40 adventures and a lot of accessories, a couple big anthology style things. There's one of my favorite ones that we never got to publish was a module about bandits. It's not a module, it's an anthology about bandits. It's got like 8 short stories in it. It's a really wonderful thing. And I'm hoping to get that kind of stuff out at some point. If we don't see it in the Westgate branding, though, we most likely won't. But we will see those things very early on in the new game. So anyway, so that's Westgate Adventures, and I hope you learned something from this rather lengthy video. And we just love making adventures, and we hope you guys enjoy playing them. So let us know, too, if you do play them. We want to hear it. Thanks again, Dom from Generate Games. Game on.